These lenses have a lot in common. They're both for the Sony full frame system, they're both 35mm prime lenses, and they both have a maximum aperture of f1.8. But one of them costs more than twice as much as the other. So, is it worth it? What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and welcome back to the Spare Tech Room, where I try to help you make better tech choices. And in today's video, we're doing a quick comparison between the Sony 35mm f1.8 lens and the Samyang 35mm f1.8 lens. Now, this video is not sponsored at all. I paid for both of these lenses with my own money, and at the end of this, I'm only gonna be keeping one. So let's go ahead and run through the numbers. We'll go over some of the similarities and some of the major differences between these lenses so that hopefully you can figure out which one is best for you. First off, of course, I already told you they have the same focal length and the same maximum aperture, and they're both pretty similar in size, although there is a slight difference between the two. So just to get a few quick dimensions out of the way, the Sony has a filter thread of 58mm and the Samyang has a filter thread of 55mm. And despite the fact that the Samyang does have a slightly larger filter thread size, it is in fact smaller and lighter, although really just a bit. You see, the weight of the Samyang comes in at about 210 grams and the Sony is 280, and you can definitely tell a slight difference if you hold them both in your hand. Now, of course, if you're not just holding them together side by side, I don't think you're really gonna be able to tell much of a difference having them attached to your camera day to day. That said, in all fairness, the Samyang is lighter. The Sony is also just ever so slightly a longer lens, although with the lens hoods attached, the Samyang ends up being longer. It just has a bit of a larger lens hood. Also, as far as just physical characteristics are concerned, the Sony does feel like it's made out of a little bit more premium materials. It definitely has a harder and denser kind of material, whereas the Samyang feels a little light and plasticky. Before getting into some more of the physical differences, another thing that they have in common is that they both do have a bit of weather sealing. So they're gonna be a little resistant to dust and splashes and things like that. Now, where the differences come in, one of the first things you'll notice from holding these is that the focus ring on the Sony is a bit of a larger focus ring here. The Samyang's is quite narrow and doesn't move as smoothly. In fact, it's almost a little grindy on my copy that I have here. I don't know if that's just because of my specific copy, but it definitely feels like the Sony is a smoother focus ring. Also, the Sony does have a button and a switch here. You have a focus hold button that of course can be reprogrammed to really whatever you want it to be programmed to. And it has an autofocus manual focus switch, which I really like because I enjoy throwing my camera into manual focus from time to time, and it's nice to have that right there on the lens. The Samyang does have a switch on here as well. It has a mode 1 and mode 2, which you can program to be an autofocus manual focus switch. The switch can also be used to change your focus ring into an aperture ring if you'd prefer that. So there's some customization that you can do with that. But I think I do prefer the controls on the Sony, not only because it does have that extra button on here, but also just the way it feels is more high quality, I guess you could say. That being said, you should expect for it to be a higher quality considering the fact that it is more than twice as expensive. But enough about the look and feel. How do they actually work when you have them attached to your camera? Now, I have a Sony a7C Mark II here, which is kind of the perfect camera for lenses like these. You know, a lot of the reason why you go with these smaller primes is if you want to attach them to a smaller camera body and have that more lightweight and less cumbersome system that you're carrying around day to day. And both of these are going to work absolutely great for that. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to be taking pictures of charts and brick walls and things like that to show you exactly how sharp these lenses are or aren't, but there are a few videos that I'll link to in the description box below if you want to check those out. That'll give you kind of more of a technical look at how these lenses work. What I can tell you, just kind of overall, is as far as the autofocus is concerned on them, they're both really good. I think the Sony is maybe just a hair better than the Samyang, but really you're not going to be noticing a difference unless you're comparing them side by side in almost like a lab environment or something like that. Also, the sharpness of both lenses is pretty incredible, even all the way down at f1.8. Now, of course, as you stomp down to f2, f2.8, f4, they're going to get both sharper just across the frame. But looking at pictures between the two of them, really even all the way down to f1.8, they are almost indistinguishable to me. That said, there are a couple of visual things that are pretty different between the two of them. And really, there's a couple of places where the Sony kind of pulls away. One is going to be in their close-up ability, their minimum focus distance. You see, the Samyang has about a 1 foot minimum focus distance, which is reasonable to get closer to objects. Of course, it's not going to give you any kind of macro ability or anything like that. But the Sony gets a fair bit closer. I think it's like 8.7 inches, I want to say, which the difference between 8.7 and 12 inches might not seem like a lot to you, but when you're taking shots of things very close up and you want to get as much magnification as possible, it is a significant difference. In fact, I'll throw up a couple pictures that I took of my little Squirtle figure that I have so you can kind of see the difference between how close you can get to them. Another thing I noticed, especially when doing kind of close-up photography wide open at f1.8, is that the Samyang does seem to have a bit of what I think is color fringing. There are these kind of purplish and greenish colors that show up around, especially hard edges at very close distances. So if you're taking a picture of text or anything like that, I took a picture of a lens that I have here, and you can see that the text on it is kind of discolored from close up. And the Sony didn't seem to have that problem, at least not as badly as the Samyang did. But all that is to say, are there differences between these two lenses? Yes, absolutely there are. Technically. Are you really gonna notice those differences day to day though? I think for the majority of people, not really. Maybe if you like to do a lot of close-up photography, it may benefit you to have that minimum focus distance and that close-up picture quality of the Sony. But again, you have to consider you're paying more than twice as much for it. And is that really worth it to you? Maybe it is, but for me, I don't think so. Either way, I'm gonna go ahead and link to both of these in the description box below. If you wanna check them out and maybe do a little bit more research for yourself, definitely jump down there and check those links. They are affiliate links, so if you use them, it does help out the channel, and I really appreciate that. I also did another video a little while back going over kind of my budget lens collection for my Sony system. That's one of my most popular videos on this channel, so I think a lot of people really like it. So maybe check it out if you think that it's something that might be interesting to you. Otherwise, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Drop all that down below and I'll do my best to answer them. As I said, this channel is all about helping you make better tech choices. So if there are other lenses that you want me to compare to one another, definitely let me know down there. Otherwise, I'll see you next time in the Spare Tech Room. Be good.